You're listening to The Debbie Daily Show. Now broadcasting live on Spreaker.com. Debbie Daily, changing the world, one caller at a time.
The meaning of Cinco de Mayo, obviously it means the 5th of May, is actually not really celebrated by most people in Mexico. Excuse me. Mexico is divided up into states. And in Mexico, there is a state called Puebla. Cinco de Mayo is a celebration, represents the day that the Battle of Puebla happened. It is observed to commemorate the Mexican Army's unlikely victory over French forces at the Battle of Puebla, which happened in 1862 under the leadership of General Ignacio Zaragoza Seguin. In the United States, Cinco de Mayo is sometimes mistaken for Mexico's Independence Day, which is the most important national holiday it's in September, by the way. It's celebrated in Mexico on September the 16th. But Cinco de Mayo has its roots in the French occupation of Mexico, which took place in the aftermath of the Mexican-American War that happened in 1846 to 1850, anyway. And also the Reform War, which happened in 1858 to 1861. Now, the Reform War was more of a civil war, which pitted the liberals who were believing in the separation of church and state against the conservatives who actually favored a tight bond between the Roman Catholic Church and the Mexican state. These wars left the Mexican treasury nearly bankrupt, and on July 17th of 1861, Mexican President Benito Juarez issued a moratorium in which all foreign debt payments would be suspended for 2 years. In response, France, Britain, and Spain sent naval forces to Veracruz to demand reimbursement. Britain and Spain negotiated with Mexico and withdrew, but France, at the time ruled by Napoleon, decided to use the opportunity to establish a Latin empire in Mexico that would favor French interest, hence the Second Mexican Empire. So we move on down to late in 1861, a well-armed French fleet stormed Veracruz, landing a large French force and driving President Juarez and his government into retreat. Let me text Flivius on my cell phone and tell him to go ahead and call in. He's going to say, "You're not starting your show too early." Let's see, Triple M. There we go. Call in Flivy Pops. Late in 1861, they stormed Veracruz. Isn't Veracruz over there by, isn't it by Cancun, or am I drawing a blank here, or am I messed up thinking about this? Veracruz. Why am I thinking that's by Cancun, which is where I almost went last week? They stormed into Veracruz, landing a large French force and driving President Juarez and the government into retreat. Moving on from Veracruz towards Mexico City, I've been recently studying about the French Army. The French Army is really a bunch of badasses. And, those are the ones that started the Vietnam conflict. They actually caused us to get involved. It wasn't a war. There was never a declaration of war during Vietnam. It was just a conflict that we should have never gotten involved in. But anyway, they moved on into Mexico City. They encountered heavy resistance from the Mexicans close to Puebla at the Mexican forts of Laredo and Guadalupe, and the 6,000-strong French army attacked a much smaller and poorly equipped Mexican army of only 2,000. Yet, on May 5th, 1862, the Mexicans managed to crush the French army and then be considered the premier army of the war. The victory represented a significant moral boost to the Mexican army and the Mexican people at large. In the description of the History Channel, although not a major strategic win in the overall war against the French, Zaragoza's success at Puebla represented a great symbolic victory for the Mexican government and bolstered the resistance movement. As Time magazine remarked, the Puebla victory came to symbolize unity and pride for what seemed like a Mexican David defeating the French Goliath. And so that is what Cinco de Mayo is. It has nothing to do with the actual independence of Mexico. Okay, that's a complete separate situation. Mexico's Independence Day is celebrated on September the 16th, and just about solely in Mexico. It's not even really thought about around here. But, however, having said that, it's a pretty big day over there in Mexico, but not over here. Not over here. I think that over here, it's really just kind of, I don't really know how it got over here so much. I don't know why it says, according to a paper published by the UCLA Center for the Study of Latino Health and Culture about the origins of the observance of Cinco de Mayo in the United States, the modern American focus on that day first started in California in the 1860s in response to the resistance to French rule in Mexico. Far up in gold country town of Columbia, now Columbia State Park, Mexican miners were so overjoyed at the news that they fired off rifles and fireworks and sang patriotic songs and gave impromptu speeches. A 2007 UCLA newsroom article noted that the holiday, which has been celebrated in California continuously since 1863, is virtually ignored in Mexico. Time magazine reports that Cinco de Mayo started to come into vogue in the 1940s. America during the rise of the Chicano movement. The holiday crossed over from California to the rest of the United States in the mid-50s and 60s, but did not gain popularity until the 80s, when marketers, especially beer companies, capitalized on the celebratory nature of the day and began to promote it. Probably it had a lot to do with Corona beer also. I know we always kind of went out on that day, but, it didn't give us much. We didn't need much to want to go out and party when we were hanging out.
You're listening to The Debbie Daily Show. Now broadcasting live on Spreaker.com. Debbie Daily, changing the world, one caller at a time.